welcome to the Alpkit Night In. We're going to get inspired by tales of human-powered adventure. I'll pass straight over to Al. Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, everyone. I'm really looking forward to talking to these two crazy women this evening. And we thought that a good way to get to know a bit about Lee and Jenny, but also to get to know what you guys, the audience, are interested in, was by starting off with a poll. So we're going to ask you a question. We'd like you to answer it as best you can in about 30 seconds or so, and that should give us some sort of idea about who's on the call, who's interested, and what are your adventure fondnesses. So the question is, if you could choose to do one thing that Jenny and Lee have done, which one would you go for? The Tour Divide, the Silk Road Mountain Race, the Colorado Trail Race, the Highland Trail 550, the Arizona Trail Race, Land's End to John O'Groats unsupported in winter, or riding around the world solo and unsupported and with very little sleep? Whoever wrote the poll doesn't seem to have much fondness for cycling around the world solo and unsupported and with very little sleep. But let's see what the audience fancies. I'm going to have a vote as well here. Right. How long should we give them? 10 more seconds? Okay, I've got a nod from my technical experts in Houston. Right, Houston, can we see the results of the poll? See what Jenny and Lee are interested in? Ooh, interesting. A strong winner there for staying local, for staying in Britain, the Highland Trail 550. That appeals to people more than all of these glamorous things off around the world, and even more than riding around the world solo and unsupported and with very little sleep. Well, I voted for the Silk Road Mountain Race and that, but this is interesting. So I think then, Lee and Jenny, when we're chatting tonight, if we remember some of these things in terms of what people are really interested in. Now, I'm going to interview Lee and Jenny for 15 minutes each. I realise I didn't work out which one to interview first, so I've got a good idea what we can do. We're going to solve this by doing a one round only game of rock, paper, scissors. I'm going to say rock, paper, scissors, go, and then we'll see whoever wins gets interviewed first and then can relax. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors, go. Oh, rock, paper, scissors, go. Hey, right. We have Lee is the winner. So, Lee, good evening.
Hello.
First question, what was your journey getting you into long multi-day adventures? How did you go from not doing adventures to getting into big adventures?
Yeah, good opener. Because I think it was a bit of a convoluted route, actually, to be honest. So when I was a kid, it was like my bike was my spaceship. It was my way to have autonomy and to explore locally and to really sort of push what it was that I could do without my parents sort of hanging off me or giving me lifts places. And so I used to cut about on a really crap old mountain bike and just push the boundaries of where I would explore from my door. And I was really, really into it. It was totally what got me going. I used to ride until I got lost, and then I'd get on a train to get home, or I'd follow like Sustrans routes out of town. And so I really got into it that way. And then I kind of lost my way with it a bit. I got really into racing, and before you know it, you're spending your days looking at your heart rate and following a training plan, and you're like, why did I get into this in the first place? So it wasn't until I gave up the professional racing that I realised that actually the love of this is about the adventure, it's about the exploration, the joy of and the curiosity and just the going where the wind takes you. So I got back into it after that, and that was an absolute pleasure to sort of rekindle this fondness for journeying and to journey self-supported. So when I was a kid, I didn't take stuff to sleep out overnight, and then suddenly, you can travel for days, not just a day, if you can take your kit to sleep out overnight, and the whole world just opened up to me.
Do you remember your first solo night out? Because I know for a lot of people that's a big deal. How do you summon up the nerve to go and sleep on your own for the very first time? Do you remember that?
I totally do remember that. Yeah, and I wasn't bikepacking at the time. So I studied as an outdoor instructor when I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s. And my first solo overnight was when I was out training myself in night navigation. So before I did my summer mountain leader assessment, and I was so scared, and I just sort of went for it. Like I totally went for it. Like nothing is going to get in my way. And I packed my sleeping bag. I didn't take a tent. I took a bivy bag, and I found a ditch and curried into this ditch. And my heart was hammering, like lying in the ditch, thinking, "Oh God, I'm out here completely on my own. No one knows where I am. I'm in a ditch." And then a sheep coughed right above my head, and I absolutely jumped out of my skin. And then everything just sort of relaxed after that, actually. And I've not really looked back since, because I think just that survival, that feeling when you wake up in the morning and you survived, that you carry that into every additional every subsequent adventure, don't you? And you just get more and more and more bold with it.
Yeah. I think myself included, but also everyone I ever talk to, their first wild camping experience involves some sort of ridiculous, over-imagined terror. So, do you agree? I don't think if people are wanting to do it, I don't think they should think bad about themselves for being scared of zombies and God knows what else.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of that, I almost welcome that now, because in the morning all of those fears just evaporate, don't they? It's a really good metaphor for life. You should be a bit scared going into stuff that you're not sure of, but then that's not a reason to do it, because you feel so good once you survive it and you learn stuff once you've done it.
Yeah, true. I guess that's true for the adventure in general, isn't it? You just set off trying to do something a bit daunting and that scares you, and you feel good when you've done it.
Yeah.
And you've been in love with bikes then for ever since you were a young girl. What, in terms of just the experience of riding a bike, what's the difference of like the pros and cons perhaps of both, of racing, riding for speed and skill and mountain biking versus adventure cruising out in the wild? What are the differences in terms of the cycling?
Yeah. That's a really good question, because I still love them both. I still get loads from going really hard and fast and pushing myself to my physical limits, and really sort of enjoying that, like feeling my body working and thinking I can't go any further, and then realizing that I can, and I love that feeling. Like, not at the time, it's horrible, it's type 2 fun, isn't it? But afterwards, just like, wow, what a life affirming experience that is. And yet I know that in racing, you put blinkers on to get to that space, and by putting blinkers on, you miss everything out of your peripheral vision. And it's your peripheral vision that I got into riding bikes for in the first place. That's where you see all the good stuff, isn't it? And so I definitely need both. I need to be able to know that I can go hard and fast and just get into my own little world and just keep my head down and really not let anything else in, and have a very inward looking experience that's just about me and my body working. But I also really need to ride with other people and be connected to landscape, and be able to pause and change direction, change my mind, and not get stuck in that racing, goal orientated way of being that's so important. I think, if you're going to race, then that's what you have to do. But it's also really important to be able to switch that off and not always be competing, and not always be like absolutely on the gas and focused on a goal, because that's when the good stuff happens, is that that, having ridden around the world, bikes open up possibilities and conversations, and to not allow that into your life would be such a waste. So yeah.
I just love bicycles, the versatility from going to the shops on them to racing to going around the world to being a little old granny going around the park. They're just amazing. But when you're with Jenny, because you're both adventurous but you're also speed freaks, does ever a little bit of a secret competition kick in here? Jenny's on mute here, so you can get your answer in, Lee. But do you ever suddenly end up having a race?
Oh no, never. Me Never race with each other, never any sort of element of competition there whatsoever. Absolutely 100% never happy with each other. We ride two abreast, and yeah, there's never any competition.
Excellent. That's a good teammates answer. So you were on the founding members of the Adventure Syndicate. What were the motivations for gathering together to set that up?
So it sort of came about.
Sorry to interrupt. Maybe you can just quickly say what it is in case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah, good thinking. So the Adventure Syndicate is a not-for-profit organisation that exists to try and encourage more people to go on adventures, because we totally know that whatever length of adventure you go on, that's what's going to make you feel good about yourself. We want that for everybody. So this is about making adventure in whatever that means to you, whether that's racing around the world as fast as you can, or if it's taking the long way to the shops. That it's that stuff that's going to make you feel good. So we want to make sure that there's a diverse range of people showing that they can do this stuff, that there's not a right or wrong way to do it, and that everybody's welcome. So that's what the Adventure Syndicate is for. And we're a collective of women who ride long distances because we're passionate about the way that makes us feel and what it says to the world. And it was, the Adventure Syndicate was originally set up by myself and Emily Chappell, because we shared this idea that actually in the cycling industry, women weren't all that well represented, or if you were a woman in the cycling industry, then you were one type of woman. And that was certainly my experience in racing. You needed to be white, and you needed to be underweight, and you needed to go very fast, and how you looked was more important than your race results. We were like, this is wrong. This is so wrong. What about all those girls out there that are aspiring to just, be social or go for an adventure, or maybe they do aspire to race, but they don't look like those people in the magazines? This is wrong. Let's make sure that there's a whole different range of people out there doing things, and not always doing them because they want to beat other people. Beating other people's great, but it's only one motivator. There's loads of other reasons for having an adventure, isn't there? So that was the idea behind it, and it's grown loads, and the youth working elements come into it since Jenny came on board. She and I used to work with young people in the outdoors up in the Highlands, and so that became a natural thing to make sure that we were inspiring and encouraging on our social media channels and telling these stories and making these films, but also actually delivering expeditions with young teenage girls, like doing the hands-on stuff and taking them out for overnights and then getting them back into school in time for that first class. So that feels like it's going in a really interesting direction. And now obviously it's evolving another step with lockdown and COVID and our climate crisis, and it feels like we've got a bit of responsibility to respond to those things now too. So we're always changing and always adapting, but we hope that we're always diverse and inclusive, or we're trying to become more diverse and always inclusive.
Brilliant. You're clearly very busy doing all this. God knows how much time you're putting into it, but it's a not-for-profit. So do you have a day job?
So yeah, it is a not-for-profit. We do manage to pay ourselves a day a week to keep the thing ticking over, but it sucks up, it's a full-time job for both of us. And we've got a brilliant team as well. We've got a great media team, Catherine and James and Jack help us out. But yeah, we've got to work as well. And my day job is as Active Nation Commissioner for the Scottish Government. So it's just more of the same, really. What I'm trying to do is get more and more politicians to use the word joy when they're talking about active travel. That's my main mission. Just like, forget about active travel. Who even knows what that is? We're just talking about trying to get kids excited about running or scooting or walking to school. And then we create this culture where they become Alpkit adventurers, when the time comes.
What's the biggest thing that's stopping young people riding to school, riding in the hills, having the joy of active travel?
Oh yeah. Well, I think it is just a cultural change that we need. I wish you could pin it down just to one thing, and we could just take that pill and change it. I think in
So I've clearly sucked the joy out of your evening by answering that.
all my energy is gone. Yeah, it's cultural. I think in Scotland anyway, it's definitely cultural. It is changing, but yeah, the cars dominate. And while they do, then in our built-up areas, our adults aren't going to think that our kids are safe to allow them to do that. And so we've all got to get on board to dispel that myth. And where that myth is a bit true, put in that sort of safe places, make sure everyone's got access to green space and are equipped and feel able to go into the hills. Like kids should be able to go and sleep in the hills and get coughed over by sheep and hear themselves senseless. That's what makes them adventurous, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to now try and cheer you up with a question now. So what are you looking forward? Well, first you can give a little explanation, but what are you looking forward to most about the Sea to Summit? No, not Sea. Source to Sea. Sea to Summit can be next year. Source to Sea challenge that you're working towards.
Great, you've just given us our 2022
yeah.
Source to Sea. Oh yeah, this is so exciting, this Source to Sea project. So for those of you that don't know, and yeah, we've bombarded you on social media because we just launched it this week, but Jenny and I are going to be riding and pack crafting 3 of Scotland's biggest rivers from their very source, like where they come out of the hillside, this tiny little trickle in the hillside. We're going to follow that as it grows through communities and through wild places until it reaches the sea, and telling those stories along the way, and going and visiting schools and asking them exactly that question that Al just asked me about what's stopping you doing this more. And the bit that I'm most excited about is, well, we just had a really interesting Insta Live with Julie Fowlis last night, and we're collaborating with Julie Fowlis, who, for those of you that don't know, you have to go away and look her up. She's a Gaelic singer-songwriter, very famous here in Scotland. And she was involved in the Lost Words project, Robert McFarlane's Lost Words. You also have to go and check that out. But this is all about our connection with nature, and especially the words, like these old words that are being lost in our language because we are disconnected from nature, and really making sure that especially our young people don't lose those. And so here we've got this incredible opportunity to work with Julie to reach a whole audience of people that would otherwise see a couple of mad women with pack rats and bikes just on a daft adventure. No, it could be about more than that, and it could be about nature connection and folklore and story, and so real sort of creative poetry and word, and that just opens up adventure to a whole other audience, doesn't it? And it's that bit I think I'm most excited about.
I love the plans to be mixing creativity and culture with adventure as well. Yeah, it sounds great. Right, Lee, you can now relax because your time is up, I'm afraid. It's time for me now to chat to Jenny. But first of all, I must offer a heartfelt apology to Brenda and Liz for my little comment about grannies on their bicycles. We are delighted to have 2 70-plus adventurers. You are, I'm sure, ideal candidates for the Adventure Syndicate. So, Jenny, Lee, get Brenda and Liz signed up immediately, please. Right, Jenny, how quickly, Jenny, did you cycle around the world?
So 124 days and 11 hours. How about you, Al?
Well, I was slower than some little old granny. It took me 4 years and 3 months. And I'm not sure how many hours or minutes or seconds, but yeah, very slow indeed. So
do you know if I was going to do it again? People ask me all the time if I would do it again, and the only way I would do it again is if I had a mountain bike, and I did that. It took 4 years to do it. So yeah, you're definitely onto something.
So why is that? I mean, why did you decide to go fast, and why would you like to go slow?
So I don't regret the way that I did it. I absolutely loved it. And if you look at my average speed, you'll see that I wasn't actually that fast. I just didn't stop an awful lot. And I guess I felt like like opportunities just came my way. I was ready for it. I was building up to it without even realizing this is what I was building up to. And it had always been like, I'd read Mark's Round the World book years. When did he do that? Like 2010 or something. And I read it when, you know, cycling long distances just wasn't like, it wasn't in my life. You know, I had a young child at the time, and I just, yeah, adventuring was really limited for me. And I remember reading the book thinking, yes, I can definitely see myself doing that. But I didn't, it was so far removed to where I was at that point when I was reading about him riding through Romania and dealing with saddle sores. You know, I'd never even had a saddle sore at that point, I don't think. So it was, yeah, but I remember reading it and thinking, yeah, that is something that I would like to do. And then what do you know, like, quite often this happens, isn't it? A seed is planted, and without even realizing, you start sort of building your life around it, and sort of heading in that direction. So yeah, I always thought when I read about like racing around the world, it was always I always thought I wouldn't, if like I would only want to do that if I thought that I would have the opportunity to actually, you know, go back to places and sort of travel in the places in a different way. And I guess I'd sort of been doing that, so I felt like yeah, I was ready for a race.
Right. You said your life gradually started heading towards this idea, this was slightly growing in your mind. Was there a specific incident that prompted you from thinking, oh, I'd quite like to cycle around the world, to committing to, I'm going to do this?
So I'd been building up these like endurance miles. I'd before I was cycling, I was doing loads of hill walking and sort of been out in wild places. And I pretty soon realized that I was never going to be the first up the hill, or, you know, at the front of the pack at the beginning of the day. But 10 hours in, and I was just getting started as my friends were flagging behind me. And, you know, it was really apparent that I had this diesel engine, I could keep going, and I thrived on it. You know, when the sun started going down and we were going to be, you know, benighted, and we'd been out for 12 hours, that's when I felt like I would get this rush that I was really alive. And so then I moved on to cycling, and sort of it felt quite natural to take that sort of love for endurance and being in wild places that I'd built up in the mountains, and sort of take it onto the bike. But that was quite a, you know, it was quite a jump to like feeling like that, to be cycling around the world. And it all came about when I was out in a training camp with the Adventure Syndicate. So I knew Lee before I was in the Adventure Syndicate, and they were running this training camp, and I went out and I met a coach out there, John Hampshire, who Lee and Emily had got along to sort of work with us that week. And I'd never done any sort of training, I was always nagging Lee about training and how I should be, you know, what I should be doing, and I didn't know anything about it. And then when I started working with John had said that the coach had said that he would, you know, work with me for a year. He said he would work with a few people for a year, and it was like that Willy Wonka moment, you know, when Charlie gets the golden ticket. It felt like that. Like I burst out crying when I read his email when I got home, and he'd said that, you know, he could see, like had other races lined up, like the Arizona trail race that I was going out to do, and he could see that I was gunning for it. You know, I was really pushing myself. I'd even gone part-time at work, because I was like, I just want to ride my bike and go on adventure, but I didn't have any particular plan. And so when all of a sudden I had this person that was like believed in me, like everyone believed in me, like my friends and family, and I've got a really nice network of people, but this was like someone that was actually going to listen to me talking about my bike rides and how I could ride faster. And so I worked with them for a couple of months, and I went out to Arizona and raced out there, and it was like my first time that I'd left Europe, and, you know, I'd gone away over there. I got the bus from LA to Arizona, the Greyhound bus, which I imagined to be really romantic romantic and like this brilliant experience of being on this bus, like crossing America. It was like, I got the midnight one because it was really cheap, and it was horrendous. I was like, if I am actually going to survive this bus journey, I'll be able to do anything. And so then race out in America, and it was afterwards. It was after that I was sitting, I was sort of sitting recovering in a cafe, and I was looking up. I was like, I've got John for another 9 months. What am I going to do? I'll be the fittest I've ever been. There was like a promotion coming up at work, and you know what I was doing in social care. There wasn't a lot of promotions that came up, and I was sort of looking at this promotion, which would have been like the wise thing to do, go and get this promotion. Then I was like, can't go for that promotion. I have to work full time. I've got this guy for 9 months. What am I going to do? And it was like just this. It just started. Yeah, it just sort of snowballed really, and everything aligned for me to do it as well. Although it was hard graft to get to the start line. There was lots and lots of obstacles, but things like, you know, I got a sabbatical from my work, my family, like, you know, my son was at a point that I could leave him, and our family were all around us to support him, and just like that, some friends were like, yeah, we'd love to make a film about it. Like, I just met him in Tesco's, and he was like, oh, we're looking at like making some more adventure films. I was like, great, I'm thinking of cycling around the world. And just, yeah, and then like the money came together, and we did lots of fundraising, and then we got some brands on board, and that's when I came on with the Adventure Syndicate at Kendal Mountain Film Festival. We talked about that because we knew that I was going to struggle to get the funding, so the Adventure Syndicate got behind me, and yeah, we got reaching out to brands, and yeah, before I knew it, I was like, I cannot back out of this, even if I wanted to. You know, from meeting John in February and being on that camp to the November when I started riding with the Adventure Syndicate, it was just like, whoa, this is happening.
Well, I love your infectious enthusiasm. Just sort of feel this whirlwind of things building up in your life to going off to do this massive adventure, cycling around the world. By the way, can I just quickly pause to say how good it is to see professional athlete Lee Craigie knocking back the beers over there, and now she's finished her interview. It makes me feel good about myself. You after sponsors? Yeah. So Jenny, you went off to this amazing, huge, massive, round the world, woohoo! How was it when you came home? Did you cope well with the return to normal life, or did you struggle?
I think it was really difficult coming back from it. It was that I was just, and not just because of the trip, but you know, you just had to be so focused for that year and a half beforehand, or say year beforehand. Everything was about riding around the world. Just had to turn into this like such a self-centered person. Like the only time I would see my mates is if it could be after a training ride and if they were going to feed me, and I would only come to the party if I could leave by 9 o'clock. It was just like, you know, it was just so sort of tunnel vision. And I think by doing that, you almost like you sort of, I don't know, like you single yourself out, don't you? You're I mean, everyone was around me and wanted to connect with me and you know, help me. But by being on your own track like that for so long, and then being away and going around the world, like in that 4 months, and then you come back exhausted, everyone is so excited about it. It was incredible, the response I got. And I remember just sitting at home being like, I just want to shut my curtains and live in my pajamas for the whole winter. And that's basically what I did. I had no pajamas with me when I went around the world, and it was the thing I missed the most. Like, I would dream about them. Every airport I got to, I'd be like, oh, maybe I should just buy a pair of pajamas, and I'd just sit and think about it for ages. But I couldn't deal with what I was going to do with them afterwards. It felt like a waste.
I'm not sure I know of any round the world cyclist who took pajamas, but that does sound like quite a good luxury item for in the tent, doesn't it?
Yeah. You stayed in jammies instead of being in your lycra all the time.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple of times being a parent. How did you find some sort of balance between your adventurous spirit and being a parent?
Yeah, so when I So I had Lachlan when I was young. I was 18 and Carl was 21 when we had Lachlan. So we were young parents. And when Lachlan went off to nursery, that's when I sort of found out I got introduced to the outdoors and really quickly fell in love with these wild places and would do anything I could to get to them. So in between Lachlan being it's like swimming lessons or birthday parties or like a way to stay with Granny, I'd be like absolutely nailing adventures and then running home just in time for the bell to ring so I could collect him. And actually the older that he got and the more independent he became, then it really naturally just meant that I had more time to spend on endurance and to sort of build up these experiences. So it was almost like our journeys went at the same pace.
I was going to start a conversation about the pros and cons of being a young versus old parent, but you've only got 4 minutes left, so I think I'll just park that one and ask you about where the idea for Source to Sea came from. Who had the idea and where did it come from?
So like most of the things in the Adventure Syndicate, one of us have the idea and then we bat it over to the other one, and before we know it, we're doing all the rivers and we're involved with all the people, and that's like one of the amazing things about it. So it was just after lockdown, or actually it was mid-lockdown. I think we just got the 5-mile like limit lifted, and I'd gone along our local river, the Findhorn River, and I remember years ago I was just walking along at a really sunny day with the dog, and I remember years ago some friends, hill walking friends, who one of them worked for SEPA, and they did a Source to Sea of the Findhorn, and they left food at all the SEPA sort of water stations along the way, and it just all came back to me as I was walking up like further and further up this river, and I'd got in touch with Lee, and I was like, oh, when you can come back to Highland, let's go and do this Source to Sea. And then before we knew it, we had pack rafts and we were going to take days to do it, and we'd sort of managed to work it into, I think we'd been looking for a plan with the Adventure Syndicate as well. We'd been looking for a sort of bigger how to expand on Match the Miles that we'd been running for the previous few years. So it came very naturally. But
so what are the rivers? Tell us the rivers, the plan. What are you excited about?
So, oh man, I'm so excited about the Dee, which is coming up in June. That's our first river, because that starts way up in the Cairngorm, so the pools of Dee. Have you been up there before?
No, I haven't.
Oh man, it just looks incredible. So I've not actually been to the pools, but Lee was there last summer, and then we're going to follow that all the way down. It'll come out in Aberdeen, and we've just got like that whole area is just incredible, like coming through D-side. So yeah, that's the one I've got on my sights, and because we'll be in like just that thing of being up in the mountains, and we'll probably camp up there the night before and make our way down. It's going to be sunny and there's not going to be any midges, and it'll just be idyllic.
Is this the Dee in Scotland or the Dee in Italy you're talking about here? I wish you well for no midges, but yeah, that's a rare blessing, isn't it? I'm going to finish asking the questions of you two by asking you both, out of the poll questions earlier, the things you've done before, which, if you were to go back and do one again, or one favourite, which one would you pick, Jenny?
So I did the poll and I picked the Silk Road race, which I've not done.
Same as me.
Yeah, I don't really want to race it. I just want to go and ride it.
Okay, that's good, because you'd be much faster than me. We'll go and ride it slowly together sometime.
Go ride it slow, that sounds good.
Okay. And Lee, what did you go for?
Oh, that was difficult. But I could go round and round and round the Highland Trail until I was in my 70s, and probably actually in my 80s. Like a goldfish.
Right, fantastic. Well, there's a couple of Brenda and Liz would love to join you, I'm sure. So
brilliant.
Cool. Right. Well, Jenny and Lee, thank you very much for chatting to me. I'm going to hand over back to our maestro, and we're going to do Q&A from the audience. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Al.
Al.
Yes, thank you so much, Al. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Lee. That was absolutely ace. Thank you so much. It's now the time for us to ask you the questions that have been coming in from everybody. There's some fantastic questions coming through that we've had. Before we get any more questions, just to let you know, Al just called me a maestro. Couldn't be further from the truth. I've just had a Zoom malfunction, and I can't see any questions anywhere on the Q&A.
Would
If
you
you
like
have
me?
questions, you can use the chat.
Do you want me to do
them
so?
and ask them?
Have
No,
you
it's
found
all right. Alice and I have been working behind the scenes to sort this out. We'll through this now.
Oh,
So anyway, the first question that we've got, because we've just been on the source to sea subject, is from Ben, which is, if you could travel source to sea in any river in the whole world, which river would you choose?
Who was that to, Rob?
Oh, it's to you and Jenny. I see you've bought yourself some time there by asking that.
Everybody else sometime.
I know. I've got my computer here just Googling big rivers. I don't know what river it would be, but I think a river in South America, like something in South America. I was out in Colombia last year and just had a little taste for life out there, and I would really like to explore it a little bit more. So yeah.
Cool. What about you, Lee? Are you in with Jenny on that, or are you gonna have to go your own way?
Oh yeah, no, that would be absolutely amazing. And whenever Jen has an idea like that, I automatically, without even really listening to the detail, I'm like, I'm there, because she's got some really good ideas. But I really am. I guess because I've been researching rivers in Scotland, I'm just so focused on this exploring what's right on the doorstep. I honestly am just so excited about the Dee and the Tay and the Clyde. And after that, I reckon I probably will get a taste for adventuring further afield. But I've taken a no flight pledge, so I'm gonna have to ride to them. So there's a way to do this, but it's gonna have to be under my own steam that I get to the source in any other country.
Cool, thank you. Question from Dave Fox, which is, when you're on an adventure. Actually, before I move on, Al, what about you? Source to sea, any river in the world?
I thought I was off duty now.
No, you're not off duty. You don't get off the hook here.
Years ago, I canoed 500 miles of the Yukon, and I've always got it on my to-do list to go back and do that job properly, the way the gold rush people did when they came up from the West Coast America, over the pass, down the other side, when the river was frozen, waited till it melted, built a raft out of logs, burst off down with the meltwater all the way down to the Bering Sea. So I'd love to do that. But to go with Lee's no flying option, there are 8,000 rivers in the UK, so there are plenty of good options closer to home as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Al. Dave Fox, I'm sorry you've been on tenterhooks waiting for the answer to your question here. The question from Dave Fox was, when you're on an adventure, what luxury item do you take with you that's worth the sacrifice in weight or space? And I noticed, Jenny, you've already left your pajamas at home. So what is it that you take?
This. I'm an addict.
Ooh.
Lip salve. But I don't know if it actually is a luxury item, because if I don't have it, it is hard going, isn't it? But sometimes I'll use like chamois cream will double up sometimes.
Fight Club will double up.
What about you, Al?
So I wasn't listening to the question because
How could you? It's Dave Fox's question.
Well, I'm sorry, Dave Fox, but someone called Mark in the chat has done the exact what I dream of doing, which is up over the Chilkakut Pass, building a raft out of logs. So you need to get him signed up for a tour. Sorry, what was a fantastic question? It was about, the answer was lip salve, but I wasn't quite sure what the question is, and I thought it best not to guess.
The Dave Fox, the celebrity that's now Dave Fox, asked, when you're on an adventure, luxury item, what is it that's worth the sacrifice in weight or space?
I agree that lip salve isn't. When I played my violin very badly through Spain and had 120 euros to live off for an entire month, I spent €1 of that on lip salve because it definitely felt, because I was in pain. Luxury item for me is an inflatable pillow.
Ooh.
Good tip, Al. I like it. Very nice.
Controversial. Yeah.
What about Lee?
So I've become a little bit obsessed with my Nalgene flask. So these indestructible flasks. So you get a little one that is 250 mil, less than the bigger one. No, 500 mil, less than the 1 litre one. So it's about that size. And I can't sleep without it now. You fill it up with hot water, and you can sleep with your tea, hot water bottle in your sleeping bag. I just can't get my head around going anywhere without it. It's going to be a problem when it gets really hot.
Next question I have. There's a morbid curiosity amongst a few people who actually were emailed before. With a few people emailed this question before the actual webinar, which is, what's the insert variable here, which is biggest disaster, lowest point, worst thing that's ever happened to you while cycling, and how did you overcome it?
I can go. If that's
Go on, Lee.
Yeah. So on the Tour Divide, probably the worst thing physiologically that's ever happened. And I raced for years and I broke bones all over the place, but the worst thing that's ever happened to me on the Tour Divide wasn't the saddle sores. It was some reaction to ibuprofen, they now think, where my whole body just inflated. I looked like the Marshmallow Man. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. I was just filled with fluid. And I was so in that sort of race mode that I just wanted to keep going, and I couldn't, like my legs weren't able to pass the frame. They were so inflated, and I had to call it, and I had to hitch to a medical centre to get fixed. That was the worst thing. Pretty scary.
How did you decide to? Did it not put you off? Were you able just to put it behind you and carry on your next?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah. So at no point did I suppose in retrospect, I think, well, that might have actually been quite a serious thing, and probably should have paid more attention to it. But you're so in it, and I was so obsessed with bears at the time. I was so worried about being eaten by a bear that I thought that was probably the lesser of the evils. So I did manage to put it behind me, but actually in retrospect, I did give it quite a lot more thought, and I wouldn't have carried on in the same way as I did then now.
How about you, Jenny?
Staying in the same vein as blowing up, I had on the Highland Trail, actually, I got into a real mess the first year that I did it, and it was so wet. It was unbelievably wet and windy, and I got stuck by like Fisherfield River for a whole 24 hours, like walking up and down it, trying to get across it. And I developed these cankles that were like when your calf and ankle become one, and they were just getting like bigger and bigger as the race went on. And to the point, like everybody that year got them, but they were a lot faster than I was, so they were managing to sort of hobble to the end line. But I was still about 100 miles out when my ankles completely gave way. Like I was in this toilet block, I'd slept for the night, and I was hobbling out to my bike, having to hold on to like the doors in the sink, and I was just about to go up this big mountain pass, and I was like, what are you doing? Like I clocked myself in the mirror. It's like, what are you doing? So I phoned my mum, and she came and got me, but I couldn't walk for weeks afterwards. It was really full. Yeah, it was quite full on physically.
I bet. All right, you Al.
I have nothing to match these nutters. I pass on this question.
Do you? I just feel like you must just ride around with a look of joy on your face.
I was just born this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this question from Adam, which is, what's the best bit of your adventures? Is it the planning? Is it the doing? Is it the reflecting on it afterwards and sharing the stories?
Oh, they're
choosing one of those three, I would say planning, the anticipation for me.
Really?
Because the actual adventure is almost by definition painful and miserable, and then afterwards I'm always slightly depressed because I got to the finish line, so it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Therefore, next time I should try and do something a bit harder, and so then I just start planning. So definitely for me, it's the anticipation.
Al, I'm definitely not coming to Kazakhstan with you if every trip is that miserable. No way. I think, it depends, doesn't it? It just depends. But like, it's definitely hardly ever the planning for me. Like, I find the planning really stressful. Maybe not coming up with the ideas, but the actual like nitty gritty planning. It's probably doing it. Like, I get such a buzz out of being out there and shooting it. But I do like sitting in the pub afterwards, banging on and on about it. So, yeah.
Joining Alpkit webinars.
Yeah, exactly. To anyone who will listen. What's yours, Lee?
I'm the same as you, Jen, which is probably why the Adventure Syndicate runs by the seat of its pants in the planning department.
We need Al.
You need to hire me to just look at maps and draw lines over maps, and then send you off to actually go and do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I reckon we could bring you along, and we could share the joy as well. It totally does depend on the adventure, though. I know exactly what you mean, Al. Quite a lot of the time it is, you just set yourself up to have a horrific time. If you don't have a horrific time, then you feel like you failed yourself somehow. But I think I'm getting better at that, or worse at that, depending on how you look at it. And it's definitely the doing for me that I love more and more and more. The more in the moment I can stay in an adventure, then the more and more and more I love it. It's not rocket science, but that's really difficult to do, isn't it?
Lee, on the subject of setting yourself up to have a horrific time, there's a question from Dan, age 11, which is, how do you cope mentally on these rides, on these long rides? How do you look after your mental state?
Oh, what a brilliant question, Dan. Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? Sometimes really badly in answer to it. I think like the single most important thing is not looking too far ahead. So just what I've just been talking about, actually, if you can get to a point where you're not thrashing about and wasting energy thinking that you're not good enough and you're not going fast enough and you're not doing the right thing and that you're just in the moment, then you'll find that it just becomes easy and you glide. But on the Tour Divide, for example, because it's 3,000 miles and starting that was so daunting. How do you get your head around a race that long or a route that long? And you don't, is the answer to that. You can't. You just think about that day, and if you can't think about that day, then you think about that morning, and if you can't think about that morning, you think about that hour, and you get through that.
That's good advice for life, Lee, not just bicycle riding.
I wish someone had said that to me at the beginning of lockdown 3.
There might be time yet, don't worry.
What about you, Jenny? Do you use the same on that?
I think just to add on to Lee's, I guess the more you do this stuff, the more you're aware that if you are having a hard time, it will pass. And it normally passes with something really, it might be insignificant if you were at home. You just turn a corner and you catch a glimpse of the moon, or you get a really starry night, or you see something out in the road, and you're having such a hard time, and then you just look up and all of a sudden it lifts. And I think if you've done that a few times, then you know when it's grim that actually this is going to pass. And I find that it passes quicker, I think.
Yeah.
I think I'd agree. I definitely agree with Jenny that it gets easier with time, that you start to learn that it's the rewards of persevering through the hard times are worth it, and that you are capable of more than you imagine you are. And that you learn that with experience, but unfortunately that doesn't really help you with the first big adventure and the first time. And I think what I'd say for that is to just not underestimate the mental struggle. I got into adventure because I wanted physical challenges with myself. But you know, if you ride your bike every day for a few hours, you soon become very good at riding a bike, and that's easy. And the mental side of adventures is the hardest and the most consistent struggle. So I would say don't beat yourself up if you do find it hard, because that's perfectly normal.
If you're out riding at night, I love thinking if it's, you know, a little bit grim and it's maybe midnight and you're like on a mission and you're really late home, I just try and think about all the people who are like losing out on this night because they're all cozied up in bed, and how actually what losers they are for that, and how I'm really lucky because it's like stolen hours, hardly anyone's out here. And before you know it, like if you can tell yourself a different story when it's hard when you're in it, definitely, but maybe if you can feel that you're heading that way, if you can just tell yourself a different story, then even if you know it's a bit bonkers, it helps.
Yeah,
there are lots of pros and cons of solo adventures versus with other people, but one of the great things of being with someone else is when the times are hard, or those wet, dark nights, that is when you end up having hysterical laughter, like laughing till you pretty much pee yourself laughter, which is just one of the best things of adventures.
Yeah.
Jenny, just on that point.
What point? I've seen myself.
One just now. That point on riding through the middle of the night, thinking about all those people watching the Emmerdale omnibus sat on the sofa
in their comfy pajamas.
That's right. Yeah.
Losers.
Penny is asking, what's the longest that you've ever cycled without getting any sleep?
Oh, I would not recommend this. I don't recommend it to anybody because it's so bad for you. But if you want to do it anyway, I think probably the last night around the world, that was a long shift, Lee, wasn't it?
That was. I was just thinking, I think I might have peed myself. Laughing at the end of that with you.
I think we'd ridden for like 36 hours and we were in the giddiest state, and we were just this was me finishing round the world, and like these photographers were coming out and we couldn't stay on our bikes. We were like falling off them, like laughing hysterically, like singing really silly songs. We're like, right, we need to get a grip. Yeah, so that was a pretty long shift. Yeah, around that. I mean, it's not the very first night I stayed up by myself and rode all night. That felt like a superpower. Like, you know, I'd done it before with people, but actually staying up, fighting through that really scary bit that you're like, oh, I need to go to bed, and then working through, right, I've got everything I need with me, I've got my stove, it was on the Cairngorm loop actually, I've got my, you know, tent or whatever I had, and worked through it all, like, right, I've got it, I could stop, but let's try and keep going. And then it got to 6 a.m. and I rolled into Blair-Athol and slept in the toilet after that. But it got bright by then, and it was like, oh wow, I can actually do that. I can stay up all by myself and ride through the night.
It's so wonderful, Jenny, to hear that after such a long night you treat yourself to a nice sleep in the toilet.
I know. I did go for breakfast in the really fancy hotel when it opened.
In fact, Sophie Hastings on this point is just, your timing, Sophie's fantastic. Thanks very much. Really great webinar and some fab advice. So ride through the night. There you go, Sophie. Not to have been of use. Is there a point on that where you're riding through the night and you realise that it's all getting a bit silly, or do you feel like your mind's gone at that point to be able to make a judgment?
What do you mean?
Did you feel, so you know when you were saying you've ridden for 36 hours and you're giddy and you're singing ludicrous songs, is there a point in that thing where you go over like 24 hours and you think, oh my goodness, we've hit it now, we've gone into the mad stage, there's no turning back? I quite like
that stage. It's like, it's such a high, like, I quite like it, and I'm aware of it. Like sometimes if you're and I don't want to big this up because it's not cool. Like losing that much sleep is not cool. I've done horrendous damage by doing it, and I would really think it through before doing it again. but if you want to try for yourself, then getting like that, sort of knowing that that's coming, that your mind is maybe playing some tricks on you, or things aren't, quite as you think it, you're on that sort of brink of mild sort of hallucination. I think is quite funny.
We've had loads of questions about pack rafting. I think you've kind of really lit a fire of enthusiasm for people on pack rafting. It'd be really nice, actually, because the questions are quite broad, if you could give people a sense of how do I get involved in pack rafting? How do I try it out? Does it have to be really expensive? Are there any like low price entry options that you might have come across? It'd be lovely if you could just share some of your experiences on that.
Yeah, we are really acutely aware that the pack rafts that we use, the alpaca rafts, they're alpaca rafts, and they're sort of the top of the range rafts, and they are expensive to buy, and they're quite difficult to get a hold of. They're made in America. There are other alternatives out there, and the first time I ever went pack rafting, and I told Alpaca this, I was in the Gorge du Tarn in France. I just couldn't be bothered riding my bike anymore, and there were people sort of bobbing down the river on these kids' inflatable boats, and I thought that looks like fun, and I bought one for €10, and I bobbed down the river just sort of holding on to my bike. And I'm not suggesting that is something that you can do, but this is the range of possibilities. It's just about being creative, isn't it?
Tractor inner tubes are good.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. Carry one of those, strap back to the front of your...
Lee and Jenny, I'm sure you will know the name of this. There's a company in Aviemore that rents pack rafts by the weekend, and they're great. Who are they?
Yeah.
Andy at Backcountry Bikes.
What are they called?
Yeah. Backcountry Scott, or Backcountry Bikes.
Thanks, Mark Warrington. Just put it in the chat.
Yes, yeah, that's a brilliant option for most things in Scotland, because you're realistically only going to need it for a few days max. So before you go spanking some serious cash, it's a great option.
Yeah, and they're running trips this year as well, so they're taking people out in them and coaching them, and they're working with a few friends of ours, so yeah, they're definitely a good option.
Definitely get in touch with Andy. I know that he offers an amazing service. Yeah.
Here's a quick fire question for you all from Jeremy. Jeremy, tent or bivy bag?
Depends what you're doing.
Oh, again.
Sorry.
Does the bivy bag have a midge net?
Let's assume it has a midge net. No, let's assume it doesn't have a midge net. Let's go.
I would say if it's 1 or 2 nights and it's not going to rain and there's definitely no midgies, then a bivy bag. Otherwise, a small little tent. And to go on a long journey or an around the world journey, get a tent that's one person bigger than the number of people doing it. Splash out on a little bit of space for a couple of 100 grams, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd go bivy more. I love taking a tent if it's a really chilled out. If I'm going to spend a lot of time in the tent, if I'm going to stop before it gets dark and stuff like that, then a tent definitely. But I quite like bivvying, bagging it.
Awesome. Question from Ellis. I think people are feeling the infectious enthusiasm of Adventure Syndicate here. The question is, how do we all get involved in Adventure Syndicate? How can we help?
Jen?
I was just waiting to see what you were going to do there. Surely.
So this is it. This is the whole point of what it is that we're trying to do here. And with Source to Sea, these 3 adventures, you can match your miles on these trips. So if you go to our website or you download the app, then it can show you exactly how you can get involved in those 3 specific trips. So you can sign up as an individual, as a small group, or as a school group. If you've got access to a school group, if your kids are in school, then send us all of those messages. And we want as many of you as possible to actually match our miles as we travel down these rivers, which will equate to about between 20 and 25 miles a day, that sort of thing. And there's loads of other ways that you can get involved as well, but I'll let Jenny tell you them.
Okay, yeah, we've got a really exciting, really exciting sort of opportunity at the moment that I was trying to avoid using the word opportunity so much that I just did it. But we're reaching out for regional for regional coordinators. So we've already, we get asked this question lots, like how can we get involved? And the dream is that that we'd create these pockets of communities that within different areas that are, sharing adventure ideas and, sharing, like just having people to go out with that are sort of like-minded people, and who are maybe getting involved with some of the stuff that we're doing, whether it's on camps or whether it's match the miles things. So we've just put an ask out at the moment for regional coordinators, and we have been inundated with people. It's amazing. We've just extended it a little bit longer to sort of get our heads around where we'd best for these regional coordinators to sort of be placed. And once we have that, then hopefully we'll have regional coordinators in quite a lot of the UK, and so then that is how people can get involved. So by going and sort of being part of that regional group.
And we've got events and training camps and all sorts of stuff as well. So just keep an eye on the socials.
Oh, remember events.
Remember events. They were fun, weren't they?
Yeah.
Jesus.
I know, that was mean, wasn't it? We'll not say any more about events and we're get together.
I'm going to move on. We've just had a question through, which I thought, in order to tee up this question, because we will finish this webinar soon, and I feel like I need to give people on the webinar some time to enjoy this after they realise what's going on. Is Jenny, I'd love you just to share with people the light that you're using to light your face.
That's mean. That's so mean. That was a secret, Rob.
It tees up a beautiful question. Look at that. The commitment.
It's a Toro. I'd highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's a nice light.
Sitting room lights don't work.
So the question about the lights it's from B actually. How do you charge your stuff when you're out? GPS, lights, phone, everything. What do you use?
Depends how long you're out for. But on bigger trips around the world, I had a dyno hub, and then that would charge battery packs, and then that would charge the long list of things I had to charge every day. And also had plugs that I would, whenever I stopped, I would just plug everything in. But you wouldn't always take that. You don't always take that, Lee, do you?
What's that, the dyno hub?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only set up on one bike, so yeah, just big battery packs depending on how long you're out for, and then just sometimes you just have to stop at the cafe. What a shame.
Yeah. And then another question that came through, and I think I feel there must be more to this answer than just the comedy answer that you got, is you mentioned stopping in toilets as a kind of a matter of course I'm going to stop in a toilet and have a sleep. The question is from Rosie, is why toilets? Why not find a nice bench or somewhere to sit on?
So if you get a good one, right, if you get a good toilet, you've got the potential to dry your clothes out because you can hang them around the place. You can wash if there's a sink. Some of them actually have a hand dryer, so you can dry things off. Some of them have got like a baby changing thing that comes in really handy for making your dinner. You know this is truly how you doing that. She knows. And also then you can like lock the door, and so you can get your bike inside them, and then you can lock the door, and and you're completely out of the elements. It's not how I spend my weekends. Like I get this, it's sort of, I think people think it's a hobby of mine. It's not. I've stayed in a few, and it's all been in quite extreme situations.
Jenny, you would love cycling down Japan. The toilets there are so luxurious. The public toilets are so clean. They are a delight to sleep in, and of course it's fully en suite. just if you can sort of wedge something onto the hand dryer, you can basically have heating all night. It's luxury. I'm with you, Jenny. Anytime, toilets, yeah, I'm a fan. They're amazing places.
Better than a bus shelter. I mean, a bus shelter is okay, but
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for that. I think it's kind of we've got to the end of the questions from people that we've had, and I think it's just about right because it's exhausting answering these questions. I think putting you through it. So thank you so much to all three of you answering those questions. So just what we'll do is we'll finish in a moment, but I just want to say a few thank yous. So Al, thank you so much for looking after us all tonight, asking the questions to Lee and Jenny. It's an absolute pleasure having you with us. It's so good. So thank you so much, Al. One of the things I would say to everyone is right now we're going through a 24-hour period where on Al's Instagram you can ask Al anything. So as if this opportunity hasn't been enough, you can go onto Al's Instagram now and ask him anything. So do it. So check out Al's Instagram and do that. Jenny and Lee, I just want to give you the biggest thanks for coming on tonight. It's wonderful to be able to work with you. I wish you the best of success in everything that you're doing with Adventure Syndicate. It's so good, and everything that you're doing with the Source to Sea. What an exciting project! It's so cool. So thank you. So. Everyone, if you do go on, do download the Adventure Syndicate app. As Jenny says, everything is on there that you need to know to follow and get involved. Also, the Adventure Syndicate website's got loads and loads of information on. And if you want to follow the story and see what's going on Instagram, Adventure Syndicate on Instagram is the handle is Adventure Synd. We've missed off the Ikit. So it's Adventure Sind. That's the what to follow on Instagram. So do follow that. It's a joy actually, and I think the word is joy. That's what you come across. That is the reason to go out, isn't it? So thank you so much. And then finally, thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. There's so much else you could be doing. There's Zoom calls that you just don't want to go on another Zoom call. It's horrendous. It's just been another hour on Zoom. The evenings are getting lighter. Spring is springing. It's time for us to start to enjoy the evenings. This will be the last Alpkit night in of this season, but we will be back when the nights draw in after the summer, and we'd love to see you again. So thank you everyone for coming. It's lovely to have you with us. Jenny, Lee, thank you. Al, it's been brilliant. Enjoy your evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.